Malcolm, you have a hand up.
Yeah, just as a quick aside, in measurements we did in empirical software engineering over a number of years, we were able to show that on average 7 years experience was equivalent to 1 year's training. So the people who think they can learn on the job do so, but they do it rather slowly.
That's even worse. That means I'm not going to be a head chef anytime soon.
Taking questions as we go along?
I'll take them, and if I don't want to take them, I'll leave them till the end. Okay.
Why should a geographer be a software developer?
That's an interesting question. So, why should a geographer be a software developer? Because you need someone to spark the original piece of software. It's very difficult. One of the things that I believe in is that there are different stages of software. That you go from having an idea to having a sort of prototype, to having something which is of the kind of quality that you would share it with your friends, to something that you would share with people outside your immediate circle, to something you would be willing to sell. And one of the things that's very difficult is to have that spark if you're not coming from the subject that that spark would really address. Because I think the best things, the best ideas in whatever kind of line of work or business come because you understand what the need is that you're meeting with that idea. Yeah.
So I think one wants to be very careful not to think in terms of software development being the critical thing there. I think computational thinking in the generic sense is the critical thing.
Indeed.
In the geography course or any course, software development is something more specialist and a different business.
Indeed, and I think when I count my numbers here, which are based on the Edinburgh courses, so I hope I don't annoy anyone in this room, I'm looking at the kind of courses which teach things like computational methods and so on. And I'm counting the ones which are compulsory, not the ones which are optional. So there is a vast range in the amount of training that's given to different subject disciplines. I think that's something that we can agree on. And I think one of the interesting things is whether or not the amount of training that's given leads to better or worse researcher developers later down the field. Because there is always the question as to whether or not people get too much training and feel that they can do too much too early. Yeah? Master's courses are a good idea. And there are a lot of master's courses that address this particular skills gap. I think the interesting thing is that whilst I say all of this thing about the different comparison of the amount of training that people are given and might require, if you look at both of these examples, both in terms of software teams and in terms of a kitchen, you typically only have one head chef or one architect. You need everyone else. The whole point there is that you do need people with differing levels of experience, and you need to have a team of people working together. The question is whether or not the amount of training gives you too much courage and leads you to making mistakes because you become too cocky. So. There is another thing, though, as well. So it's not just about the amount of training and so on. If you think, even if you are that person who has had the right amount of training, has had the right amount of experience, and crosses the divide between your subject area and the skills you need to achieve it, there's this thing called the bus factor. And one of the biggest problems is that you may have people relying on the code that you alone develop, and then you get run over by a bus. And so there is a sort of general agreement within most organizations that have lots of projects where you have a bus factor of 1, i.e. only one person knows about any particular area, that's a bad thing for sustainability. So one of the things that we have to understand is that whilst it's much more fun sometimes and much easier to work alone, sustainability relies on being part of a larger group. You cannot do sustainability with just one person because ultimately one person is not sustainable. Okay.
A quick observation there. Google tends to work with 2- and 3-person teams. for 2 years to 18 months to 2 years on their prototype projects.
Indeed.
Which means that they are prepared to take quite a high bus factor.
Yeah.
And they, by the way, don't have anything other than head chefs. In fact, they want cordon bleu head chefs only.
That's true to a certain extent, but they have. If we're taking that analogy too far, then I would say that from the teams I've seen within Google, they end up having all head chefs, but in different disciplines. You have a pastry chef, you have you have a meat chef, and you have a guy who does little piping. So yes, I think also I've seen in Hewlett-Packard as well. They tend to work in teams of about 4, which are loosely coordinated, and they have a rotation going on as well. But you have a trade-off between what your bus factor is and how agile your team is. Certainly, it's not a good thing for everyone to know everything. When we look at that, we can look at things such as, well, you know, it's reminiscent of the cabinet. You end up with everyone rotating around the jobs and no one really knowing anything. So you can take things too far. Okay, myth 4. I've maintained software in this domain and it's just the same as any other. So one of the things that's very interesting is whether or not you can compare different pieces of software, the different requirements and so on. And this is where I get to show lots of fun pictures about different styles of war dress. So for a long time, when you looked back, everyone was wearing very, very similar kind of clothing, particularly when they went into battle. So you've got a whole set of people from different races, all kind of using a spear, and all using something that looks awfully like a skirt. You get long skirts, you get short skirts, but throughout a lot of the world, everyone thought, this is the way to go. And then you end up with this picture here, this relief. This is, I don't know if you can see this, this is a very interesting carving because it has 3 things which are firsts. And if I have a laser pointer, I can maybe... No, I can't. It'll go straight. On the left-hand side, what you see is a picture of someone in profile. This is one of the first images that shows someone in profile rather than head-on from this particular culture. We also see a representation of a horse, but most importantly, on the right-hand side, we see representation of trousers. This is the first time that trousers are shown in an image. And for a long time, you get different reports from either side saying that each others were obviously barbarians because one set wore skirts and the other set wore trousers. So I just put that in because I liked it. I think one of the things that we notice is that people develop different things based on their requirements. So why did trousers come about? Well, you lose something in terms of movement, but you also gain something in terms of your exposure. So it's the same in software. That was a brilliant segue, wasn't it? One of the things that we've understood from the research that we've carried out is that there is no real common set of requirements for software. When we look at e-research, for instance, and these are the sort of outputs of a workshop that we ran about a year ago, it's that the very top one there is no single common e-infrastructure. No one could agree what set of software and hardware met their needs. So this means that what we have is a diverse and complex ecosystem of different pieces of software to meet lots of different types of requirements.